Welcome back to the Healthy Life Approach podcast. I'm Kristen Beasley, and today we're talking about something that's been hiding in plain sight for a lot of women, especially in perimenopause and menopause: sleep disorders that don't look the way your doctor expects them to look. Let me start with a number that should stop us in our tracks. Most women with sleep apnea don't know they have it, not because they're fine, not because they're imagining things, but because when they say, "I'm exhausted," or "I wake up with headaches," or "my brain feels like it's full of cotton," the answer they get is often a shrug and a label: "Well, you're in menopause." And yes, menopause absolutely can disrupt sleep. But what if it's not the whole story? What if menopause is the doorway and on the other side is something diagnosable and treatable that's being missed? Today, I want to walk you through why the diagnostic system is so biased toward the way sleep apnea shows up in men, what the research says is at stake for women when we miss it, what clues your Oura ring or Whoop might be already waving in your face, and how to advocate for the right kind of testing. Sleep sits at the very bottom of the brain health pyramid for me. It's foundational, and this topic got even more real in my house recently because my husband went through a full in-lab sleep study. Seeing his results changed how I interpret every squiggly line and score I see on wearables, including my own, and I think his story will help you understand what to look for in yours. So here's the setup. Most screening tools and classic symptoms for obstructive sleep apnea were built around one familiar picture: a middle-aged man who snores loudly, whose partner has watched him stop breathing, and who could fall asleep anywhere, anytime. That's the version many clinicians were trained to spot quickly. But women often don't walk into the office saying, "I'm falling asleep at red lights." We come in saying, "I can't sleep," or "I'm anxious," or "I'm down," or "I'm tired all day but wired at night." We report fatigue more than sleepiness. We mention morning headaches, trouble focusing, and that frustrating feeling of sleeping all night but waking up unrefreshed. And it gets more complicated. A sizable chunk of women with even moderate to severe sleep apnea don't report the textbook symptoms at all. So their story doesn't trigger the right alarm in rushed appointments. What happens instead? Many women get treated for the downstream symptoms and never get evaluated for the cause. One study published in Sleep found something that's hard to ignore. Women with obstructive sleep apnea were far more likely to be given antidepressants than to be sent for a sleep study. The ratio wasn't even close. That should make every one of us pause and ask, how many women are being treated for mood when the real problem is their airway and their sleep? Even the screening questionnaires can work against us. The most common one, Stop Bang, was designed around risk factors and symptoms that tend to fit men more neatly. Some of the points come from loud snoring, witness pauses in breathing, and a larger neck circumference. When researchers look at how well this tool performs specifically among midlife women, it misses too many cases and inaccurately flags too many people. Translation: you can fail the screen even when you're struggling, and you can also get dismissed because the tool doesn't fit the female pattern as well. A sleep specialist and menopause practitioner, Dr. Andrea Matsumura, described what she calls the sleep syndrome of menopause, and I think that phrase hits because it explains what women are actually living through. Hormone shifting, sleep getting lighter, symptoms getting louder, and the medical system assuming it's all just inevitable. Now, let's talk about why menopause changes the sleep landscape in the first place. Dr. Matsumura describes a sleep squad of hormones that influence women's sleep: estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and melatonin. As women transition through menopause, all four can be disrupted. But the one I want you to really understand today is progesterone, because it does something most people never hear about in a standard appointment. Progesterone isn't just about reproduction. It also helps stimulate breathing. It supports the muscle tone that keeps your airway open during sleep, including a key tongue muscle that helps prevent airway collapse. During the reproductive years, that support rises and falls with the menstrual cycle. After menopause, progesterone drops, and that airway support can drop with it. Think about what that means. You can go from being protected to being vulnerable, not because you suddenly did something wrong, but because your physiology changed. Estrogen plays a part too. It influences neurotransmitters associated with sleep quality and sleep architecture. It can help with falling asleep, staying asleep, and stabilizing sleep architecture. When estrogen declines, sleep often becomes more fragmented. And then add in changes in body composition that can increase fat deposition around the upper airway. Put it all together and you get a perfect storm. Lighter sleep plus reduced airway tone plus a narrow airway. That's not a character flaw, that's biology. Now, here's where I want to widen the lens. This conversation isn't only about feeling rested, it's about long-term brain protection. Major research groups have identified disrupted sleep as a modifiable risk factor for cognitive decline. In the brain health world I'm trained in, sleep optimization and sleep apnea screening are not nice to have, they are core. Why? Because repeated oxygen dips and repeated microarousals do real damage over time. Chronic intermittent low oxygen can drive processes linked to beta amyloid buildup, and sleep fragmentation interferes with the lymphatic system, which is essentially the brain's nighttime cleanup process. Deep sleep is when the system is most active. If your sleep is constantly being interrupted, you don't get the same level of cleanup. A large long-term study out of Korea found that sleep apnea's association with Alzheimer's type dementia appeared more prominent in women than in men. So if you've ever felt dismissed with, "That's just menopause," please hear me. Missing this diagnosis isn't trivial. It's not just discomfort. There are serious stakes. Okay, let me bring you into my living room for a minute because I promised you a story. My husband did an in-lab polysomnography, which is the full overnight sleep study with all the sensors. His AHI came back in the moderate range for obstructive sleep apnea. He's moving forward with treatment, likely with a nasal pillow CPAP. But what shocked me wasn't only the apnea number. The study also captured a huge amount of periodic limb movement activity in just a few hours. When I saw the results, it felt like someone turned on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, all those nights where his wearable data looked off made sense. Because here's what I'd been seeing: deep sleep that seemed consistently low, restlessness that stayed high, and sleep staging that looked choppy even when the basics were in place. I'd look at the graphs and think, is this stress? Is it late caffeine? Is it blue light? But it didn't add up. The sleep study explained it. Repeated limb movements can trigger microarousals. Your body pops closer to wakefulness again and again, and the night never fully settles. And when wearable detects movement, it can struggle to accurately determine which stage of sleep you were in. So the wearable wasn't useless. It was pointing to the smoke, but only the sleep study could show us where the fire actually was. That's the relationship I want you to have with your wearables. They are excellent early warning systems. They can show patterns, trends, and red flags, but they are not a diagnosis. They can tell you something is wrong. They usually can't tell you exactly what. So let's get practical. What should you look for when you're tracking sleep with a device like Oura or Whoop? First, heart rate variability. And this is important because menopause can lower HRV over time on its own. Hormonal shifts, especially declining estrogen, can reduce parasympathetic tone. That type of HRV change usually looks like a gradual trend across weeks or months. But sleep apnea can leave a different fingerprint. Instead of a smooth overnight curve, you may see repeated jagged spikes and drops within the same night over and over. It's like a rhythmic stress response. Airway partially collapses, oxygen dips, and the body surges into fight or flight to reopen things. Then it settles briefly, then it happens again. So look at the shape, not just the score. Is it smooth and gently sloping, or does it look like a saw blade all night? Second, resting heart rate. Normally, your heart rate should dip overnight. If you consistently see an elevated nighttime heart rate, or you're not getting that expected dip, and you're also feeling unrefreshed, that's a piece of a puzzle. Third, respiratory rate. This is one of the quietest but most helpful metrics because your respiratory rate tends to be stable from night to night. So when your baseline shifts upward and stays there, it stands out. Menopause alone doesn't typically drive a chronic elevation in respiratory rate. If your breathing rate climbs and other warning signs are present, it's worth exploring whether there's a respiratory disturbance during sleep. Fourth, oxygen saturation. If your average SpO2 is repeatedly below the mid-90s, don't brush that off. And if you're using a wearable that shows breathing irregularity patterns, pay attention to repeated nights where breathing looks frequently disrupted. One weird night happens to everyone. A consistent pattern is different. Now, let's address a question I get a lot. How do I tell the difference between hot flashes and apnea in my data. Here's a simple way to think about it. Hot flashes tend to cause occasional spikes rather than a repetitive rhythm. They often come with a sustained rise in heart rate for minutes, and they can be paired with a noticeable temperature change on devices that track it. Apnea-related spikes tend to be brief, repeated, and patterned. They can happen repeatedly, potentially many times an hour. And instead of correlating with a temperature jump, they often line up with oxygen dips and breathing disruptions. Different signature, different mechanisms. Next, deep sleep changes. Normal aging and hormonal shifts can reduce the percentage of deep sleep. But if you're consistently seeing extremely low deep sleep, very poor sleep efficiency, and lots of wake time, that suggests something is actively fragmenting your night. And as my husband's study taught us, the culprit could be breathing events, limb movements, or both. A wearable can't always tell which is stealing your deep sleep. Now, let's move into the advocacy part because knowing is helpful, but getting help is the goal. If you're in perimenopause or postmenopause and you're dealing with ongoing fatigue, morning headaches, brain fog, mood changes, or unrefreshing sleep, even if you don't snore loudly, I want you to go into your next appointment with clear language. Here are 4 phrases you can use. First, could my sleep issues be caused by something beyond menopause? That question makes room for investigation instead of assumption. Second, should I be evaluated for sleep apnea even though I don't snore loudly? You can add that women often present differently and that risk rises after menopause. Third, is it possible my anxiety or depression symptoms are being worsened by undiagnosed sleep disorder? That's not you rejecting mental health care, that's you widening the differential diagnosis. Fourth, I would like an in-lab polysomnography, not a home sleep test. And let me explain why that matters. Home sleep apnea tests estimate breathing events using total recording time, not necessarily actual sleep time. If you're awake in bed for long stretches because of insomnia, your results can look artificially better than reality. Home tests can also miss patterns that are more common in women, like REM predominant apnea, and they cannot diagnose periodic limb movement disorder or restless legs. So if a home test comes back negative, but you still feel awful and your data still looks concerning, that should not be the end of the story. Bring your wearable data with you, not as proof, but as context, pulling together several weeks of trends, oxygen patterns, breathing irregularity, nighttime heart rate graphs, respiratory rate changes, and recovery patterns. Then frame it simply. My wearable shows consistent patterns that concern me, and I'd like to determine whether a formal sleep study is appropriate. If you and your provider decide a sleep disorder is likely, let's talk options because there is real help available. For insomnia, the evidence consistently supports CBT-I, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, as the first-line approach. It outperforms many medications and supplements, and importantly, the benefits can last well beyond the treatment. There are therapists who specialize in CBT-I, and there are also reputable digital options, including a free app called the CBT-I Coach, developed through the VA in Stanford. For sleep apnea, CPAP is still the gold standard, but it's not the only tool. Oral appliances can help in mild to moderate cases. Positional therapy can work if your apnea is worse on your back. And because hormones are a part of the mechanism in menopausal sleep disordered breathing, hormone therapy may be a helpful conversation for some women, particularly options that include progesterone support. Research has found associations between hormone therapy and lower rates of sleep apnea in postmenopausal women. That doesn't mean it's right for everyone, but it does mean it belongs on the table as a thoughtful discussion with your clinician. And if you have symptoms of restless legs, that creepy crawly tugging sensation in the evenings that make you want to move, ask your physician for a ferritin test. Not just iron looks okay, ferritin. For restless leg syndrome management, many experts look for ferritin levels above 75. Some women, especially those who had heavy periods during perimenopause, may have quietly depleted iron stores even if their basic labs don't ring alarm bells. Finally, protect the sleep environment. Keep the bedroom cool. Be cautious with alcohol in the evening because it can disrupt REM sleep and worsen hot flashes. Some people benefit from magnesium glycinate at night, but remember supplements are usually supportive, not curative, and they take time to show effects. I want to close with the big picture because this episode isn't meant to scare you. It's meant to mobilize you. If most women with sleep apnea don't know they have it, and if the risk of leaving it untreated are serious, including higher mortality and greater cognitive vulnerability, then we can't afford to keep calling every symptom just menopause. Not when there are tools to detect it, not when there are treatments that change lives. You have data on your wrist or your finger. You have lived experience in your body. And now you have language you can use in an exam room. Track it, measure it, optimize it. Thanks for listening to the Healthy Life Approach podcast. I'll see you next week. And until then, take care of your beautiful brain. Disclaimer, this podcast is for general educational purposes only. It is not medical advice and does not replace care from a qualified health professional. Please consult your licensed provider about medical concerns and before starting any supplements, medications, protocols, or lifestyle changes. This podcast does not create a coach-client relationship. Individual results may vary. From time to time, episodes and materials may include affiliate links that provide a small commission at no extra cost to you.